Will the Bills sign J.J. Watt? Or more importantly, should they? What's the plan for Matt Milano and free agency? And does Brandon Beane have a surprise move up his sleeve in March? That's all coming up on this week's edition of the Buffalo Plus podcast.
Welcome into the Buffalo Plus podcast presented by BuffaloPlus.com. Mike Catalana, Dan Fetes. I am Jenna, Cottrell. We are in full off-season mode, but let's get into it because J.J. Watt is still out there on the open market. We know he's a free agent. Now, there's been some talk. He apparently makes his decisions like he does for DoorDash, and it takes him a long time to figure some things out. But, Mike, it's been some time now that Watt has been out there, and I think people have had the ability to kind of think this through. And do you feel like Watt would be a good fit in Buffalo now after the initial shock has kind of worn off?
I think he can help the Bills. I think J.J. Watt is a good football player that at moments can be dominating. We've seen him do that. I think it can be a good move, but I don't think it's a move they have to make. If that's hedging a little bit, I'm going to hedge. I'm going to say They need a pass rusher. They need help. I'm not saying it has to be J.J. Watt. Now, bring J.J. Watt onto the team. I believe their pass rush is better. But this is not in a vacuum. Dan, it isn't like you just say, well, we got J.J. Watt. Now we can go do 10 other things because you're going to spend more money on him. And he is a player with a few more miles on him. Mm-hmm. So I will tell you that if they get him, I think he makes them better. But I will also tell you that getting him does impact other things they would want to do.
And I think that's the key point. We've talked about our stay or go series where we've been breaking down positions and things like that. Like if the Bills had more money in the salary cap, I would be all for it. And if they didn't have things they need to address on the offensive line, again, I'd be all for it. But I've said this before too. And Jen, I think I was talking to you about it. Like J.J. Watt doesn't make the Bills a Super Bowl contender. Like he's 31-year-old Watt doesn't. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the reason I know that is because they're already Super Bowl contenders with Josh Allen. So like they don't need to do this right now. Like they were already one game away. Like, and again, we talk about injuries. Like J.J. Watt, we talked a lot about Matt Milano, the guy that's had a lot of injuries. Like J.J. Watt has had a lot of injuries. And I don't know what the price tag gets into. And I don't know what bidding war. Like I think when Brandon Beane pulled off the Stephon Diggs trade, it made a lot of sense because he also did it quietly and like did it on his own. And like, I don't know if the sweepstakes for Watt gets too big for what the Bills' other needs that they need to address.
I completely agree with you because I feel like in the beginning, when it first came out that he was going to be released by the Texans, it was like, go get after it. The pass rush, they need help. What would a guy like J.J. Watt bring? And then now that you've had some time to kind of like settle in and really look at the numbers and look at how much I can't remember the exact report that came out, but just looking at how the Bills in terms of the salary cap looked compared to other teams, especially in the AFC East, even like the Jets have a lot of money. Everyone else, the Dolphins, the Patriots, they all have more money than the Bills. The Bills, this is a year they're kind of in an unfamiliar position considering they're not used to being so limited by the salary cap and not having that available cash to work with. But I feel like early on it was like, you got to get after J.J. Watt. You got to bring him in however you can. And then now that we've had some time to really look at it, you're like, you know what? He's a very talented player. But the Bills have a very talented team and they can do a lot with I think this Bills team has been good at taking guys that have had some mediocre success other places. I think of a guy like a John Feliciano or players like that maybe weren't a well-known guy, bringing them to Buffalo and then seeing them shine.
And Jenna, you made a really good point there with saying when it happened, you were like, they got to go get him. I think the circumstances make it even bigger. Free agency hasn't started yet, but J.J. Watt is available. Nobody else is available. And I said, it's like you're going to shop for a car and there's only one car in the lot. And it might be a really nice car that's expensive to keep. Oh, that's right. Yeah, really. Well, maybe you should shop for a new car. But anyhow, it's that idea that and then you got other people around you and now the bidding starts. Or, maybe a better analogy would be a house, like shopping for a house when only one pops up in a neighborhood and 15 people are going for it. And at that moment, you're like, this is the only house available. J.J. Watt is the only house on the street that's available right now because he got released at the time that he did. And so look, if he gets signed, you're going to see tremendous excitement from a fan base by the Bills. I'm saying you're going to see players all tweeting out support. And again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have JJ Watt on the team. I'm just trying to look at it. And I do believe this. We talked about it before. You have faith in Brandon Beane. This is what the guy does. He's watching the tape. He's not looking at the name. I think JJ Watt would fit with their culture. I know he's been deal in Houston, but he knows what he coming. I think he'd be a great addition in that way. He's great in the community, all those things. But Jan, you got to weigh it with everything else. And so I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying if they get him, it hurts the team. I'm saying is you got some very specific moves to make this offseason to make that jump. And like you said, they were already 60 minutes away from going to the Super Bowl. They're not that far away. And
that's the thing. The decision in a vacuum is a no-brainer. You go get them. But it's not in a vacuum. Like it is how it affects the rest of how it affects Feliciano's money. How does it affect Mitch Morse? Like, are you moving on from Mitch Morse? Okay, then maybe you have to play a rookie center. So do you want to have a veteran center, in front of Josh Allen, or do you want to have a rookie center and then have JJ Watt? Like all of those things. And that's what we've talked about with our Stay and Go series, as well on Buffalo Plus and on the YouTube page of like, this is not just, I want to keep Matt Milano. It's like, like everybody wants to keep these players. Yeah, the Bills should have everybody, but like it doesn't work that way. And so that's where I go back to this JJ Watt thing. And Mike, you make a great point in what it started as is they don't need to make this move. Like they don't need, like they needed Stephon Diggs. Like they needed to get an impact player on offense. They don't necessarily need to do that. They need to get pieces that fit and improve their defense.
Right. And how about like a team like the Packers, right? Where they're talking about you go to Green Bay and then maybe Aaron Jones walks out the door. Yeah. And while I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is sitting there going, yeah, I'd love to have JJ Watt as a teammate and helping our defense. That's not what he's been complaining about. That's again where you have to figure how you spend your money. So I don't know how it's going to play out. I'm telling you, I wouldn't be stunned to see the Bills sign him. I also wouldn't be stunned to see, him go somewhere else. And there'll be a level of disappointment. But I would say this, and we said it at the beginning, if you're Brandon Beane, you have to investigate. You have to look at it. You've got to see what money the guy wants out there. And it's good that the Bills are considered a favorite because they are that team that's that close.
Well, there's mutual interest. And I think everybody got all excited when it was like, hey, there's mutual interest. And Jenna rolls her eyes there because it's like, and I think we did on the newscast. And I was like, no, there's mutual interest. The Bills were in the AFC Championship game. And they have Josh Allen. Like, you're telling me JJ, like this isn't a 3-. It would be surprising if JJ Watt and the Jaguars had mutual interest. Then that would be a story.
Yeah. There's mutual interest in me to eat pizza every night. Does that mean I'm going to do it? Like, probably not.
Well, I've seen you on a run before, so it can happen.
No, me. But I guess the more the time goes on, if the Bills were to sign JJ Watt, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But I think it puts into perspective, if they were going to give him more money, that lowers the purse in which they can sign other players. So we know Brandon Beane is a very specific, methodical type of guy. That's why I guess as time goes on, I'm a little bit more inclined to think that he won't get signed. But we say that we know that there's plenty of people that Beane needs to worry about. And Matt Milano, the AP report, John Worrow, our colleague, having the story that Milano is set to test free agency. Matt Milano's been fantastic with the Bills, but this is something that we've talked about earlier. And Dan, I feel like when you hear that a player is going to test free agency, that likely means that he is then gone.
Yeah. And again, this wasn't a great get by, John and the AP there, but this wasn't totally shocking. I think we all kind of expected Milano, and Brandon Beane even said, I'd really like to have Matt back, but Matt has also earned the right to have free agency, and that's what it is. This is also probably a play by Milano's agent or Milano's team to kind of maybe come back to the Bills and say, hey, they're giving me this number. Here's the other number I'm thinking of. Like you raise your offer, I'm definitely going. Like, to get that message out there, that's something you always have to think about, especially with these free agency around these leagues. Where is the message coming from? How is it getting out? And what's the meaning behind it? Like, we saw that with Carson Wentz. It was like the Eagles are like, hey, he's going to get traded any single day. And then there was crickets. And it's like, yeah, the Eagles put that out there to try and push up offers. Like, I'm not saying that Matt Milano isn't seriously considering it. I'm saying it's also a move, Mike.
Yeah, it is. But this isn't a real thing. And let me explain why. Matt Milano has every way to just go into free agency, and he plans on testing. The only ways that anybody can stop him from going to free agency is if the Bills put the franchise tag on him or any other tag on him. Otherwise, he can test free agency. Like, it's totally in the player's control outside of the tag. And while the tag is available to the Bills, I don't believe they would use it. Even the secondary tag on Milano, I think they would either get it done or let him walk. You're also not hearing anything. Of course, the Bills don't leak anything, but you're not hearing anything about the Bills making offers to his agent.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be, Dan, you mentioned before, it's going to be more like a Shaq Lawson type thing, right? Where it's like, he's going to test. And once these guys test, I believe he's going to be gone. So when I say that it's in his control, it's different than the trades. It's different like a Wentz or Deshaun Watson or any of these guys where they're trying to drum up business. No, I think everybody around the league knows Matt Milano is going to test free agency. He's going to go to New England. And
I was about to ask.
Yeah, I think look, I just think he fits New England. He went to BC. They have money to spend. He's the kind of guy they'll spend a little money. It's not like crazy money. They're not giving him, $80 million guaranteed. He's a linebacker. But I could see them making that move when that happens. But again, it all goes together, right? Where do you allot your money? Dan, you mentioned 5 guys that are impacted. So it's Milano, and it's Darrell Williams, and it's John Feliciano, and it's Mitch Morris, and, John Brown. Like, go down the list of all the guys.
Yeah. Here's a quick question for both you guys. If you could get one or the other, would you rather have Milano or Watt?
That's a really good one.
Wow.
Because I think their need is big on the D-line. I do believe they need an impactful player on the D-line. I think Milano's value is his skill set. I heard somebody today talking about it and said, well, he doesn't get to the quarterback. I don't think they ask him to do that much.
They don't ask Tremaine to get to the quarterback.
They actually don't seem to ask the D-line to get to the quarterback. But what I'm saying is I think the guy has a unique skill. Now, you could also say, they were pretty good at plucking him out of the draft. Like, do they go looking for that guy? Is that the kind of guy they look for? Because this is what you have to do in the NFL. There is a value to those rookie deals, and you're only going to pay so many guys. And Dan, I know you're asking about those 2 guys. I think both of them can help this team. You would think it's more that they'd want to keep a guy like Milano, but I really do believe you only pay one guy at the position, and they're going to pay Edmonds at his age. And I didn't say it, but they're going to pay him. Yes, they're going to pay him. At some point, he's going to get paid, and he's going to be their main guy. And everybody else will work around that.
That's a tough question. That's tough because I feel like JJ Watt is going to be – he's 31. He's obviously had a great career, but like you say, the injuries. But then you can look at Matt Milano and think of the injuries too. I agree with Mike, though. Personally, what I would prefer is having Milano stick around because I think he makes Tremaine so much better. And I would like to think that with Star Lotulelei coming back, like Ed Oliver, you want to see the development from AJ Epinesa, like having hope in those guys. But Mike makes a great point of you really only pay one guy at the position. And it seems like, doesn't seem like they're going to pay Tremaine Edmonds.
Yeah. And they've invested, Dan, look at how much they've invested in their defensive line between draft picks and money. I mean, you say Epinesa and Oliver back to back, their top picks, D line, and they still are paying Jerry, and Starr makes a nice amount of money, and they brought in the other guys. Like, they have tried to do this, and you can spend some more. There are some other guys out there at a cheaper price tag, they could go for. Again, those guys aren't free agents yet, so that's the key thing. But I was thinking about, like, if Stephon Diggs was a free agent, if for some reason last year they would have cut him, the Vikings would have just said we cut him in February. and the price would have gone up and his value per year would have gone up.
Yeah.
Now, the difference with him and Watt is, Diggs is just going into his prime. He's been really good, but he's got 3 to 5 years of, I think, staying healthy. He can be in his prime for that period of time. And it's a little different with Watt. But you're also talking about a team that is right there. So they can make some of those moves without killing the whole cap.
Yeah, there are very few people that have the skill set of Matt Milano. Now, you can also say that very few people that are as big of a human being and as strong and as powerful as J.J. Watt. You can't even express how large of a human being he is. Like, it just doesn't make sense. He's the one person that when I saw him in Houston, it was just like, what? Like, it just none of it makes sense. So, but both those guys, like I said, they're kind of unicorns at their position. Hey, but Watt could also possibly play tight end for the Bills, and they could use one of them.
Yes, they could. They would have something with him on the field, get him out there as that second block or whatever it is. Hey, look, you know what I would really think would be cool for Watt? Seriously, to go sign in Pittsburgh, take less money, and go play with his brothers. Imagine that. Imagine a guy in the NFL. Both his brothers are there, right? The other one is still around, right? I think.
He's the
you
fullback.
just work the deal that says he's guaranteed to be on the roster. How's that deal? You say to Colbert, the GM, he's guaranteed. I mean, if he, I'm not saying the Steelers are that close to the Super Bowl. Who knows? You never know what happens in a year, but you would think that'd be kind of cool for him. But I guess we'll have to wait to see where JJ, even with his cryptic tweets about
mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a little, I think he's really enjoying free agency.
Yes.
Something tells me. All right. Well, Dan, you bring up a good point of like what moves we would like to make. What stands out to you? Do you think there's a surprise move that Beane could make, whether it be a position or a player or someone?
Well, I think he has to retool the offensive line to some respects, whether that's finding another right tackle, whether that's turning Cody Ford into something that we maybe are not expecting. That is, I think, the simple one. I've thought a lot about this recently, that the splash move. We kind of sent a group text what we're going to talk about in this podcast of like, what would be the shocking move? Like, does Brandon Beane make a shocking move? We said that Watt could be that shocking move. And I was thinking about the quarterback position. And I was thinking about the backup quarterback position.
Yeah. I'm with you here.
What if Cam Newton comes back? What if they go and sign Cam Newton as a backup? As a project that maybe Cam does the Jameis Winston for a year. That they move on from Barkley, they don't re-sign him, and that you have Cam, a guy that maybe plays, that maybe would fit the system of what Josh Allen does a little bit better than what Matt Barkley does, and you kind of just stick with that. I'm just saying, how often have we heard Cam Newton or Josh Allen is the Cam Newton? Like, God forbid if something were to happen to Josh Allen next season, could Cam sufficiently run the Josh Allen offense?
I love the idea of, look, I think Matt Barkley has done exactly what this franchise wanted him to do.
100%.
He hangs with Josh. He's a good influence on him. He knows all those things. We're not talking about taking a few snaps at the end of the game. If that was the case, Jenna could be the backup quarterback and you just go in there and hand off and wave to the crowd, right? I mean, I couldn't, but
I can do that.
But she's got the wingspan. But that's not the case, right? You may need somebody. Do you really? How much faith do we really have? I guess we just have seen him play so little. How much faith do you really have in Matt Barkley if he's got to play for 3 games?
And I'm not saying I have a ton of faith in Cam Newton. Like, we saw what it was, but he also just came out and said that, the COVID really affected him, really kind of sucked out the life out of him for that season. It's just one of those things where, Mike, exactly what you're talking about. I'm not talking about filling in blowout wins. I'm saying that if Josh had to be out for 2 to 3 weeks, I would probably think that Cam might be able to run this off. I don't know. It was just one of those thoughts where, again,
I think it's interesting.
Free agent. If Cam wants to take a minimum be back with Beane, be back with McDermott. The other, you guys know he played at Carolina? Like you could also get that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Also, he could be back with Ken Dorsey, who's a guy that he has talked about that he really likes. Cam's a big fan of Josh Allen, like a whole bunch of things. Like if Cam's ready to kind of maybe take a step back, I don't know if that's the case. 31 other teams passed on him last year. So have I gotten enough jokes in there? Have I gotten the Carolina joke? Okay. Because that might be one of the surprise moves where you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah. I would say that is, remember we talked about it, when Cam was the free agent, and the idea is like,
I said no.
Last year. Yeah.
Right. What you'd have to do though, you got to keep him away from one guy. Nope.
Who?
Justin Zimmer.
Oh yeah. Those lockers be on the opposite side.
Yes, that's a good point.
Hey, that was a huge play against, Cam was on his way to beating the Bills in that game.
Yeah.
Zimmer came up big for him. I think they could get along though.
Do you wonder if maybe now after this season, Cam's, I feel like, had some, I don't want to say humble pie, but he's kind of had that back down to earth moment. Do you think that his personality could adapt, Mike, to being the number 2 guy in the room?
I think the step down that he had.
See, I don't know if that's the case. That's why I
in terms from being the guy to going to Foxborough. Now I saw an interview with him, really interesting. Him talking about, I think he wants to go back to Foxborough. I really do. I really do think he does. And he talked about the respect he had for Belichick and how he just enjoyed being around him. And I think Belichick really liked him too. And at the end of the year, when there was a lot of talk, they're going to just sit Cam and all. I think Belichick had too much respect for Cam as a veteran to just say, sit down, like almost like it's your fault. We've been bad. Yeah. Everybody knew that team stunk last year. That team had no weapons. They had nothing. And Cam certainly had his issues. It wasn't like he was great, but he had moments that he was good. And I think to your point, the difference would be if you come to Buffalo, he's obviously the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
But I do think, Dan, to your point of upgrading the position, I think they have to look at that. I think they do. And it doesn't mean that they don't just sign Matt Barkley. It's probably a 1-year deal and they bring him back. He doesn't make a lot of money. I don't think he can command a lot more money.
Yeah.
But it is a weird year with quarterbacks. There's going to be guys out there, hey, Teddy Bridgewater played in Carolina. Oh, that's right. Not when they were there. Now, I'm just saying there's quarterbacks out there now this year more so than ever. So I think their eyes have to be open to that.
And Jenna, I think you make a good point though about is Cam willing to do the Jameis Winston? Is he willing to be the backup for a year, kind of resurrect his career in that aspect? And I know what you're thinking. I know a lot of people that are listening or watching this. It's really tough to have your backup quarterback dressed like that. Like it would be real tough.
Yeah. I mean, Cam's always been the guy. He's always been the guy. And so, when he went into New England, he was going to be the guy. I know it was only that 1-year deal, but like, it's hard to take that step in your career when you dress like that. So that's just something to consider.
I mean, he's big into his look.
Yeah, which is fun. It's great. Like,
right, but you're right. But that's the look.
But can you really type like that and be the backup? Like, I don't know.
Right. The backup usually is he's either the guy ready to take over. Right.
Yeah.
He's Matt Barkley.
Yeah.
What I want to see is Matt Barkley dressed like Cam.
That's it.
Say that again.
I want to see Matt Barkley dressed like Cam as the backup quarterback.
I'm good on that.
You think we're going to see that? No, you don't need that? Okay. Get the hats going.
The hats. All right, Mike, what do you think? Is there anything that piques your interest in terms of something?
I've mentioned it before. Zach Ertz is going to get cut or I guess could get traded. It's probably a June 1st designation. So what this would allow for the Bills, I believe, is to look into the draft for a tight end, a guy that can run. Look around in free agency, but knowing that a guy like, I think Zach Ertz is going to get let go then. And I don't think Zach Ertz is flying up and down the field, right? He's not that guy.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's a really good pass catcher, and he'll fit the culture. and they'll get him relatively cheap, and maybe they can rework that deal. And you could play him. You could play him, and still Dawson Knox would still get plenty of snaps and could still develop. I think could do it. I just think that Beane made such a point about that position, and a guy like that gives him a little leeway to say, if I go out and find a guy in free agency at the right, Jonnu Smith or somebody, or I do something in the draft, and I don't have to make a move, because I was looking at the Eagles cap, which is a disaster, but they would wait till after June 1st to either make a trade or a cut. And that's when a guy like that, when teams are like, well, what are you going to do? They're going to make a move then. So I like that, because I know they want to upgrade the tight end position.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Dan, what do you make of that?
Yeah, they have to do something at tight end. Mike also mentioned him. I think I mentioned it in one of the podcasts. I think Jonnu Smith fits that bill of kind of being a guy that can make defenses have to game plan for a tight end, and that's just a little bit more reliable. What's going to happen with Lee Smith, who's kind of been used as an offensive lineman, like just the whole room in general.
Yeah.
Like there was, he was on a Tennessee radio station where he's from, and kind of hinted that he may be done and retire. Yeah, Lee Smith. So just kind of some of those things. Or do you draft one at the end of the first round? Do you trade up to try and go get Pitts out of Florida? Like, I don't know. Like, where does he fall?
Yeah.
Like
Pitts, there's people that have Pitts going like 5th in the draft.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 100. Like I said, you would need him to fall to 15 or 16 to even get a chance at that. Draft people are saying Dan's such an idiot right now. There's no way. I'm just saying what do you evaluate going forward? Because like I said, last year was it last year or the year before was Hawkinson? It was 2 years ago. That was the Ed Oliver year. Yeah.
He had Oliver year. Yeah. And he went right before Ed, right? He went right before him.
Yeah, he went 7th. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good point though, because we see the Bills definitely are struggling in that department. And I think you're right. I do think Lee Smith is probably moving on to greener pastures. I mean, the role that he was in this year was obviously, like you said, like an extra offense.
Good. He caught a couple touchdowns.
He had the touchdown. Do you have 2 touchdowns?
I think he had one against Denver, and then he had another one at home.
Did he not have? Wait a minute.
I thought he had 2.
Who caught the one in the? Maybe why I'm drawing a blank. Who caught the one when Josh was falling down in the playoff game? Was that Dawson Knox?
Yes.
It was Knox.
Yes, that was
okay. In the Colts game, that's one. I was thinking.
I don't think he had I know he had one last year in Tennessee.
Yes.
By the way, I did our. I think I plugged this in the last podcast, but the top 10 moments of the 2020 season. Look, Tyler Kroft has not really panned out in Buffalo. Like, I don't think that's a hot take by any means, but he has caught, like, the touchdowns that he has caught have been like game-winning touchdown catches. He had the one in Pittsburgh last year, and then the one in the Rams against the Rams back in week 3.
That was a great catch.
That was.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's just kind of funny where, again, a few years ago, they signed Tyler Kroft, and everybody's like, oh.
I thought they were going to sign Tyler Eifert coming out of Cincy. And then, and now Eifert's not in Jacksonville.
And look, I don't think what Dan's talking about with the quarterback position, I think interesting, and a guy like Cam makes it more interesting because of the connection. What I'm saying about the tight end, I just think there's questions of how much would they be willing to do. At quarterback, they drafted Jake Fromm, and he was sent off to COVID, non-exposure all year. It's a weird year for him if they think there's anything there, but there's not a lot invested in him as a quarterback. So, and then you say they're going to do something at tight end, and that's the case. But there's some other things. You just sit there and watch. What were we thinking going into last year? That he was going to draft a wide receiver?
Yeah.
And he used that pick.
Yeah.
And he got a guy. So don't put it past him to do something else.
Who knows? I think my more hot take was that Devin Singletary will not be on the roster come the first game. Now, that is a hot take. I understand. But
I like it. I like it. Go ahead. I want to hear more.
No, I just think that this year you saw the Bills' run game not be effective when it needed to. And I think by the end of the season, before Zach Moss had that injury, he really established himself as a more reliable runner for the Bills. And I think when we talked about originally, we thought it was a more Thunder and lightning type of pairing with Singletary and Moss.
Jenna,
everyone but Dan thought it was that.
No, but Dan, the minute you mentioned a running back, Dan thought you were talking about a different sport. He doesn't even count them as part of the roster.
He thinks
He's sitting there going,
I almost wanted to mute my own mic because I was like, I'm not going to be rude. I'm going to let Jenna talk, and then I'll say my point.
Okay. Well, I think that when you look at the skill sets of Moss and Singletary, they are very similar and maybe more similar than most of us expected. And I think while I understand wanting to keep the playbook open and keep your options open, I just think it wasn't effective. And I know they drafted Singletary a couple years ago, but I think there just needs to be something different because it has not worked.
Unmute, Dan. Go ahead.
I just don't know when they didn't run the ball well enough to win games. Like I just, this goes back to this. This goes back to my, when you said that they didn't run the ball well enough at times last year. Yes, I get that, but like they didn't lose their 4 games because they couldn't run the ball.
Well, okay. So last year they were,
you know what I'm saying? My take is try and rework the offensive line. Try and get your blocking schemes better, something like that. Run it back with Moss and Singletary. Sign somebody that fills the TJ Yeldon role that maybe rotates as the backup behind Moss. But I go back to this point. The Bills didn't lose the 4 games because they couldn't run the football. Like, I understand they weren't good. I know they weren't good with running the ball.
But how much could the game have changed if they had an at least effective run offense? I mean, I know
there's still a top 5 offense in the league.
I agree.
Look, we're sitting here like
the Bills are a passing offense. We all know
they
that.
are.
But again,
and look,
there are times when that passing offense was failing, and to have another available option, to have confidence in 2 guys that could at least make an impact, they didn't have that confidence.
Hey, look, Dan. The reality is they believe they need to be better at it. McDermott believes it, and I think Beane believes it. And I think they want to change it. Look, do you go after James White? He's going to be a free agent, a guy who's been so good in that role, not a huge money guy. Get him out of New England and make some plays for you. Have a different type of back. You talking about TJ Yeldon. They don't. I'm talking about a guy who finds a way to help Josh Allen. And I believe in that position, it could be somebody who is a better pass and a more dynamic pass catcher.
Yeah. And it's,
yeah, you don't have Singletary has some value too. Again, people always say, "Well, what are you going to do? Trade him?" I always say this to you guys: you're making a move at the draft, and you move some picks, and it's a pick, and it's Devin Singletary to move up or whatever it happens to be. Those kind of things can happen because I think he's a talented guy. I do too.
I just think also at running back, it's a position where you don't have to invest a lot of money. And because of that, it makes the parts more interchangeable, in my personal opinion, because you're not shelling out as much money as you were for a different skill position player. Just saying.
No, valid points. I understand wanting to run the ball better. And it was funny. I didn't want to nitpick, but Mike goes, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane know they need to run the ball better. You didn't mention Brian Dable because he doesn't care about running the ball.
I guess who's boss?
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I think
he knows. I think he knows. He also got 1,500 yards out of Stephon Diggs this year. He was spectacular. Yeah. They got all that stuff. Yes, it's really good. You can't count on that all the time. You really can't. You do need something else. Look, Kansas City had Mahomes and Kelsey and all these guys, and they ended up drafting a guy in the first round to play running back. I mean, there is a value to having guys that can make plays for you. And
but the Chiefs also picked up Le'Veon Bell, had 2 guys named Damian that I had never heard of, and were fine because they had Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill. That's what I'm saying.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, played a huge – Clyde Edwards-Helaire was the one that beat the Bills when they played earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I'm saying – while Brian Dable's impact and focus is on the passing game, you cannot tell me if you were to ask him, hey, would you like to run the ball better? Would you like to be more effective in the run game?
Yes. Yeah. But I don't think that making a big move
it's not a big move though.
That's what I'm saying. I on my depth chart in the Dan Fetes breaking down Bills offseason needs, like running back in the running back position is so far down. It just is.
It might be, but here's what I'm telling you. It's like every move matters on the team, and it depends on where you prioritize it and what you want to do. I'm telling you, if they look at their roster and say they don't have they don't have something different in that position, and they think they can get more out of it. I think that's what they're going to look to do. And to
agreed.
Point, if you're looking at those two guys in the backfield and they use high assets to get both of them, one guy's a year closer to free agency is the way I would look at it is. And I like the way Zach Moss plays. I like Singletary too. But neither of those guys is going to get enough carries. So I think you're going to have one of those guys, and I think they could very well make a change at the other main position at running back as a guy that can be a more impactful guy for Josh Allen catching the ball.
Dan Fetes.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with those things, but we started this podcast talking about like JJ Watt, like the D-line needs to improve. They need to get more pressure because the defense struggled at times. We talked about Matt Milano.
Why do they care about the D-line? Josh Allen threw for 100 touchdowns, and they don't need a defense. Do they need defense? Their punter was good, but do they even need a punter? They should just go for it on fourth down and throw it every
Analytics.
Like fourth and half a yard.
I understand and agree with analytics, but I think you also have to. It's also a balance. I'm not saying you should run it on first down every time. I'm not saying that.
No. Right. I just want to get this point across that the Bills did not make the Super Bowl because they didn't have an effective running game. Like I just like that is like what I keep wanting to bang my hand down, going like, who cares that they couldn't run the ball? They went 13-3, and they had a top 5 offense.
Yeah, and I would tell you this.
Mike, I agree.
They were vulnerable in the Colts game. They almost lost that game. They were vulnerable in the Ravens game in the playoffs because they did not throw it well in that one, and they didn't have another gear. They didn't have anything to really help them out in that way. And you watch Tampa, who has Owens and Tom Brady, and they ran it right down the throat of the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So
all pro line.
Yeah, okay. But they ran it. It can be effective.
Yeah. You're so mad. All right, Dan, let's do it. We'll do a pizza.
I did not think this was going to turn into a running podcast again. Like I wasn't mentally prepared to bang my head against the wall.
I'm again not saying it's a running. I just think the Bills had a great offense. You can't dispute that. But again, every team is trying to get better. You have to be better. And a way to improve your offense is to have a better running game. Okay. Let's bet wings and a pizza for my hot take.
Okay.
All right.
I say Singletary's back. And you say he's not. Week 1. On the roster. I'm not saying active, because I said before, he can be the TJ Hill guy.
Active. Well, I'm going to say active.
The only way he's not active is they've either moved on from him or he's active or he's injured. Like, you're not having Devin Singletary on the roster if you decided to move on from him and
he's not active week 1. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, yeah. Okay. I like hot wings.
And hot takes.
I was gonna say, and hot takes and the cup and char pepperoni. All right. Well, clearly we all need to take a break because things got heated. To say. All right. Be sure to join us on more on buffaloplus.com as well as Buffalo Plus's
and the YouTube page. Yeah, we need people. You've been great at it. Subscribe and comment. We comment back to you. We want you as part of the team here on Buffalo Plus. We really appreciate it.
Or support Dan. We want to hear from you because we know this is a very spirited conversation. But yeah, that'll do it for us. Be sure to check out buffaloplus.com, the YouTube page, obviously the podcast. Rate, subscribe, comment, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all of the above. For Mike Catalana and Angry Dan Fetes. I'm Jenna Cottrell. We will
run.
We'll see you next week.